Hi, welcome to this session. We have with us Sujata Kelkar Shetty, who is a PhD published author and has been writing for several years in media on holistic health and wellness. She's a certified life and wellness coach and does a lot of corporate work as well. Sujata, welcome to the summit.
Thank you, Kumar.
Sujata, you've spoken and written a lot about holistic health, wellness, and the mind-body connection. In the current environment, how important do you think it is to sort of revisit our own priorities, look inward, and try and rediscover that connect? And what are some of the tips for doing that?
Thank you for inviting me today, Kumar. I think your first question is incredibly relevant, right? This book was written almost for a time like this. It was literally written in a way for us to sort of stop and think about how it is that we're leading our lives and make the tweaks that we need to lead a life that really suits our purpose, suits our health and well-being, because it's not just about adding years to your life, but also about adding life to your years. And therefore, it becomes really important that we revisit and look at our lifestyle choices, see what works for us and what doesn't. Sleep, incredibly important. And we were just talking about it a little while earlier, how the change in circumstance has impacted people's habits so that they're no longer living the structured life that they were perhaps earlier, but that's also impacting their health and their behaviors and therefore their emotions as well, right? So sleep becomes really, really important, making sure you're getting just enough, so which is about 7 to 8 hours. For most people, of course, there are people who can get by with less, and I have a suspicion you're one of those people. But for most people, it's about that much time. Also, I think this is a great time to find ways of exercising. Again, everybody knows that they need to exercise, but what people often don't realize is that most people who stay slim and are not overweight are people who are expending calories while living their lives. And that is called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's a chapter in the book. The short form is really simple, NEAT, N-E-A-T. And the idea then is to really expand the amount of calories we use through the day. So that means housework is a fantastic opportunity for that. And we've all gotten a chance to use the broom in the last 6 months. So I say embrace it, right? Embrace the opportunity to do your household chores, to cook more, to do standing work. And if you are in a home office, which I'm sure most of you are, then invest in a standing desk, or basically just put a plank, and attach it to a wall and stand and work, because that's better for you than sitting and working. I'm sure you've heard this before. Sitting actually shortens your life if you do it for an extended period of day every single day without taking a break. The other aspect that I would really invite your listeners to think about is how they are looking after their mind, right? This is a subject that's a passion for both of us. And, but it's not one that people give enough time cultivating, right? We often, if we are health conscious, we are often aware of what we put into our mouths, but we're not aware of what we are watching, what we are listening to, are not recognizing the impact it has. So for example, this pandemic has led to people watching TV endlessly. It's important to be conscious of what you're watching. Watching shows that are negative, listening to people who are negative isn't good for you. And it makes intuitive sense to you as I say this to you, but it's remarkable how many of us, including me, have, spent an evening watching something that is actually really negative. And so that's something to keep in mind. And I would ideally say reduce your Netflix, Hotstar, whatever it is, watching to a really bare minimum. Invest instead in classes like art classes. I've rediscovered my creative energy. It's a chapter in the book, but I personally have rediscovered it with an art class that I take on Zoom on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I really look forward to it. It's interesting because it's also showed me another side of my children. So here, the mother is taking a class and the children have to respond to it, right? So they will say, oh mama, that's really good, or that's, I like the shading, or I like the color. And there's a switch in roles, so the nurturer becomes the nurtured. And that's an interesting play that would not have happened in the pandemic, and certainly would not have happened if I wasn't taking this art class. So these choices that you make will have very interesting and nurturing attributes. So that's something that I would also add, and to the mind sort of section, and then finally really be compassionate. Right, this is a moment for us to really harness that skill and to enliven it in our bodies and minds, with ourselves, with others. Becomes really important, as some of us are unfortunately going to fall sick during this time. It becomes all the more important to remember that kindness to ourselves and others goes a long way.
You've dedicated an entire chapter titled Compassion and Self-Compassion. In a corporate and organizational context, or especially at the senior leadership level, what are some of the key takeaways in terms of compassion and self-compassion? Some anecdotes or some key learnings there.
Right. I think as a concept in itself, it's something that people take a while to wrap their heads around. So it's important to understand that compassion and self-compassion is not indulgence. It is not allowing people or yourself to really slip when it comes to what is required, right? To get what needs to be done. But it's about responding to yourself and to others the way you would with your best friend. So it's about expressing the kind of kindness, whether it's about your listening skills, whether it's about your kindness to each other, giving each other the space in these times to maybe take a little more time to do your best. But it should not be about indulgence. It should not be that you sort of give so much ground that it actually deserves the person and yourself. So it is certainly a fine line. And when people say, I need to take a break and go shopping, or I need to go on a spa date, that's not self-compassion, right? That's indulgence. But to say that I am going to work at a goal in a very systematic fashion, to say that I'm going to be disciplined and not watch that last hour of TV that I'm used to and go to sleep instead, that's self-compassion. To make sure that you're eating a really balanced diet, really disciplining yourself to stay on course in a balanced diet, staying away from sugary foods, staying away from alcohol, that's self-compassion. And encouraging your team to really look after themselves in this way, that would be compassion.
That's really interesting because, you're so right. We often confuse just giving into our temptations or indulging ourselves as self-care or self-compassion. And at an organizational level, I think there could be layers and layers of different meanings in terms of actions that one could do to talk about self-compassion. Speaking of the organization, we have now in India thousands of companies who invest both time as well as money in employee development. And I think the often disregarded area is mental health and well-being. Of late, there has almost been a cacophonous response to saying, let's have a counselor or access to a counseling app. And organizations feel that they've done their job by giving people access to somebody to talk to, which is good. But do you think that is enough? And if not, then what else can organizations do to really take care of their employees, and also really in a commercial context to say, listen, we are these are the people who will take care of our organization and are responsible for the future of the organization for all other stakeholders, and we need to make sure they are making the right decisions and hence be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question you're asking, Kumar, because I've thought about it for a while. I've worked with a few organizations here in Bangalore, and I think there needs to be a two-pronged approach. So the first one is designing a program that is for the upper echelons of management, and that sort of has a mirror, so to speak, with what the rest of the organization experiences. But the program must emphasize that wellness is holistic.
Yeah.
So it is about looking after your body and mind, and it is not one or the other, it is both. And therefore we can't if we're emphasizing the mind, naturally then just having counseling services and ticking that box isn't sufficient, because first of all, you have to make sure that your employees are actually accessing that service. That, from my experience, is an issue for corporates. But even if your employees are accessing that service, a counselor will tell you that's not good enough, because the person really does need to look at their habits, needs to look at what else they're doing with their lives, in terms of looking after their bodies, with their what are they doing, spending their time, their free time. As we just talked about, it's so important what you feed your both your body and mind, and therefore it really almost needs I wish I wish life coaches were accessible to everybody. I wish we could, we had a world where everyone could have this one person that they could talk to, that who would serve as their champion, to sort of, build and strengthen their lifestyle habits that served us, because that's what we really need. And I do think it's possible to create like group coaching modules for the lower levels of management, but for the upper echelons to serve as examples, because it really helps. Like, I did a small workshop with the PwC, with the senior partners and their teams here right before the pandemic, and what the juniors said to me after the workshop was it really helped that their seniors talked about their experience. Simple things. I mean, it sounded simple to me, but they were profound moments in their lives. And they by simple, I mean, it's something that happens to all of us, whether it's a transition, right? A job transition, a life transition with children, the kind of stuff that happens in life to all of us at some point. But the fact that they shared it, and the fact that they, talked about the challenges, was something that the young really now felt they could relate to, right? And if these same people talked about how they were living their most fulfilling lives by really looking after their bodies and minds in very concrete ways, that would serve as something that could support the rest of the people in the organization. As long as they had something, they had some scaffolding within the organization to fall back on, and tools that they could use to further their own wellness.
That's an interesting point. So it's almost like the support system within the organization, which can sometimes either mirror or even supplement what you have at home in your personal lives. And I think it goes back to your core premise of wellness being holistic, whether it's at the mind or at the body level. It's got to be holistic. Sujata, thank you so much for joining us. We've come to the end of this session, but it's been fantastic speaking to you. Some great tips,
Sure.
Simple ideas, but not always easy to implement, and break out of our old habits. But thank you so much, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.